The FIRE movement is a lifestyle movement whose main goal is financial independence and retiring at an age well below what many people would consider normal. The ideas and principles of FIRE originate in a 1992 best-selling book entitled Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin and Joe Dominguez. FIRE has since gained traction, particularly in the US, but has spread to many other countries, including South Africa. I'm quoting a June 2019 City Press article. My name is Jolly Mokorosi, and thank you for joining us on Wealth at Work, a show that focuses on wealth creation and education in South Africa. To help us unpack the idea of financial independence and retiring early, we are joined by a familiar face, Ms. Palesa Dube. She's a director and wealth manager at F.I.R.E with more than 17 years experience combined in both the banking and private wealth management arena. So as a financial services professional, what is your opinion on FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early Movement, of which many of its followers, mostly in their middle income households, are in their retire in their late 30s or early 40s? Is it counterintuitive to wealth building principles?
Jolly, if anything, I think it puts one more solution on the table. If it appeals to one, I'm certainly not opposed to it. I think it almost encourages us to do what we always say to our clients, to say, define what it is that's important to you, and then let's work towards that goal. Instead of just going with the flow to say, hey, work until 65, save so much, it forces one to be deliberate about what you're doing. And then live your life and put the means in place that take you to specifically where you want to go. So I'm certainly not opposed to it, and I don't think it's counterintuitive to wealth creation. At the end of the day, it's what's important to you. It's what you value, and what the course that you want your life to follow. So if traveling is important to you, not necessarily waking up to a 9-to-5 is important to you, then by all means, put the plans in place to retire early. I don't see anything wrong with it at all. No.
That's quite interesting. I know a lot of kind of financial planners are not for the FIRE movement, and it's got its shortcomings. But if somebody does pursue the FIRE movement from your perspective, what would you say to them are the things that they need to take into account before they dive headfirst into this?
Look, I think certainly it's a swing out of the norm, right? Mm-hmm. And people that do it successfully, you find that most of the time they are professionals. They are in the type of professions that, from the onset pay them quite a good salary, that they are able to live off a fraction of what they are earning, so that they can aggressively build up an investment portfolio or a nest egg to be able to retire early. It does certainly come with sacrifices that many wouldn't necessarily be able to make. Imagine, can you live off 25% of your salary, a quarter of what you're earning? If you can, then you're part of that population that would be able to retire early. It's not something that most people can do. And like I said earlier, it comes with sacrifices. Most of the time, people would forego having children, for example, having a family. Are you comfortable with not necessarily owning a property? Because those are part of the sacrifices that you make. Instead of paying towards a bond or purchasing a home of your own, that money typically goes towards an investment portfolio that will fund this kind of lifestyle or your retirement. Would you be comfortable foregoing a luxury vehicle for something quite basic, and modest, to be able to put away money towards an investment portfolio. So it's those kinds of sacrifices or an alternative way of living that one would need to adopt to be able to fund something like that.
So it's funny that you say the F.I.R.E movement may be a fad. I saw another title, I saw another article that had me intrigued, which ties up to a point that you made earlier. And the article was basically, did 2020 kill the F.I.R.E movement?
Yeah.
Because markets went south in 2020. I mean, obviously,
couldn't travel in 2020.
We couldn't travel in 2020. Markets went south. We were locked down in our house. Your markets are going crazy. You might have lost a big chunk of your portfolio. So that 4% might become questionable. But the other thing for me is that that's 4% in the US that it's based on. Is it realistic to transfer the 4% into a South African context, considering the number of years that we've been that we're living longer, because the 4% came from a retirement rule that assumed that you'd be around for about 30 years post your retirement. But is it transferable into a movement where you are retiring effectively 20 years before normal retirement age, to put it that way, and we're living longer?
And when I say balanced fund, it means you are investing a sizable portion of your assets in shares or equity, listed shares. A portion would go into property stocks, a portion would go into bonds. So it's quite a well-diversified portfolio. So from something like that, it's not unreasonable for one to expect, I'd say, between 6 to 8% on average. So the question is a 4% drawdown rate or withdrawal rate reasonable? Could one achieve that in South Africa? And the answer is certainly. I mean, if you look at a balanced fund, for example, over the long term, and when I say balanced fund, it means you are investing a sizable portion of your assets in shares or equity, listed shares. A portion would go into property stocks, a portion would go into bonds. So it's quite a well-diversified portfolio. So from something like that, it's not unreasonable for one to expect, I'd say, between 6 to 8% on average in an annualized return from that kind of portfolio. Then you need to subtract any fees that you would, incur from that portfolio, being administration fees, advice fees, fund manager fees. And in a typical portfolio, one can look at about, let's say, 1.5% to about 2.5% in fees. So off of an 8% growth, that actually leaves you with around 6%. In growth.
You're talking about a retail product,
Yes.
not an institutional product. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And inflation?
And then the next 2%, then one needs to set aside for the effect of inflation. So in a South African context, certainly a 4% rule is viable. And when we talk to clients, that's exactly what we advise as well. Retiring clients, that's exactly what we advise, to say, don't go beyond your 4%. That's a sustainable withdrawal rate, taking into consideration all the expenses that one needs to account for. Another key to the F.I.R.E movement, you find that, of course, you're going to be frugal in all aspects of what you're doing, right? So even in your investment portfolio, you would be frugal there as well. And the proponents of the F.I.R.E movement tend to then invest in lesser expensive investment alternatives. And in our space, that would mean like your exchange traded funds, right? Because they tend to be a low cost option. So there you can, further decrease the costs that one would incur in your investment portfolio. And if you can do that, then it just leaves a lot more for you to be able to spend. So I've taken a long-about way to say certainly a 4% drawdown in a South African context is certainly possible.
Excellent. I think that definitely people will see that the F.I.R.E movement is not only possible in South Africa, but we really do need to give it a bit of thought beyond kind of what we're seeing in articles. And remember that there's a South African context to be considered in all of this. I've looked at the F.I.R.E movement and I thought, you know what, I absolutely agree with the first component of it, which is financial independence. I really do believe that we should all be financially independent. But the second part, I think, is the part that I've always had a little bit of hesitancy around, is the idea of retiring early. I don't like the idea of retiring early, but I think you've certainly given me some things to think about in terms of what are the components of that retiring early. It's not necessarily retirement as I understand it. It just might be more of a lifestyle thing or a change in gears in a particular direction. So once again, thanks again for being our guests. Much appreciated as usual. Thanks for the insight and the work that you put into this. I'm sure people are like, oh, love that woman.
Thank you. Thanks, Shirley. Thank you for the invitation. I love, interacting with you on this platform. Thanks again.
Thank you for watching Wealth at Work. We look forward to sharing more stories and profiling other dynamic entrepreneurs and business people. Please like and share and leave a comment telling us what topics you would like to see next. From me, Jolly Mokorosi, thank you and goodbye.
For me, that was lesson number one, that you will not get your hands into those golden properties because they circulate amongst a certain type of people. And I remember I had to get a friend of mine who was white, and we had to go and show our faces in a property. And I said, today I'm going to be Mrs. Williams.